VIP suite at Pacific Crest Hospital shimmered with the kind of quiet luxury Eleanor Voss had always demanded. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the Pacific Ocean, the water catching the last streaks of a fiery sunset. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, masked by lavender diffusers, and the soft, rhythmic beep of medical monitors filled the air like a metronome counting down to silence. Eleanor lay propped up in a sleek hospital bed, her silver hair fanned out on the pillow, her sharp green eyes dulled by pain but still piercing. At 68, she was a shadow of the tech titan who'd once ruled Silicon Valley, her body frail from the cancer eating away at her. Yet even now, she carried an air of command, the kind that made people sit up straighter without her saying a word. Miles Carter stood by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. At 32, he was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell just a little too long over his forehead. For 7 years, he'd been her personal assistant, her shadow, her fixer, the one who anticipated her needs before she voiced them. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, a stark contrast to the tailored suits he'd once donned for her boardroom meetings. The ocean stretched out before him, endless and indifferent, and for a moment he let himself get lost in it, the way he used to as a kid when life was simpler. "Miles?" Eleanor's voice broke the silence, thin and raspy but edged with that old authority. He turned, meeting her gaze. She shifted slightly, wincing as the movement tugged at the IV line in her arm. "I need you to stay tonight." He frowned, stepping closer. "I'm already here, Ms. Voss. I wasn't planning to leave until—" "Not like that," she cut him off, her tone sharp despite its weakness. "Not as my assistant, not checking my vitals or fetching my damn water. I want you to stay as someone who might listen, really listen." She paused, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "I don't have much time left, Miles. Hours, maybe, and I can't face them alone." He stood there, caught off guard. 7 years of late nights, urgent calls, and quiet moments flashed through his mind. He'd seen her at her best, closing billion-dollar deals, charming investors with a single smile, and, at her worst, cursing out doctors who dared suggest she slow down. But this was new, vulnerable. It wasn't a request she'd ever made before, and it hung in the air between them, heavy and strange. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice low, almost cautious. "You've got lawyers, doctors, a whole team who'd jump at the chance to sit by your side. Why me?" Her lips twitched, a ghost of the wry smile she used to wield like a weapon. "Because you're the only one who doesn't kiss my ass, Miles. You never have. Even when I was screaming at you over some missed deadline, you just stand there, calm as hell, and fix it. You see me. Not the billionaire, not the headlines, just me." She coughed, a dry, rattling sound, and waved off his move to help. "Don't. I'm fine. Or as fine as a dying woman gets." He didn't argue, just pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat, elbows on his knees, watching her. The monitors beeped steadily behind them, a reminder of the clock ticking down. "Okay," he said simply. "I'll stay. What do you want to talk about?" Eleanor's eyes softened, just for a second before they hardened again with purpose. "Everything," she whispered. "The things I've done, the people I've hurt, the regrets that claw at me when the morphine wears off. Will you listen?" Miles nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, I'll listen." She took a shaky breath, staring past him at the fading light over the ocean. "Good, because once I start, there's no going back." The room grew dimmer as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving only a faint purple glow over the Pacific. Eleanor's voice, though weak, carried a weight that filled the silence between the beeps of her monitors. Miles sat still, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on her as she began to unravel the story of her life. "I was 23 when I started it all," she said, her gaze drifting to some invisible point beyond the window. "Just a kid with a beat-up laptop and a garage in Palo Alto. No money, no connections. Just a crazy idea that software could change the world. Everyone told me I'd fail. My dad said I'd be lucky to scrape by as a secretary, but I proved them wrong. A faint smile tugged at her lips, pride flickering through the exhaustion. 6 years later, Vostek was born. We built tools that companies couldn't live without. By 40, I was on the cover of Time, shaking hands with presidents. It felt like I'd won. Miles shifted in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You did win," he said quietly. "You changed the game. People still use your software every day." She laughed, a dry, bitter sound that turned into a cough. "Yeah, I won. But winning's a funny thing, Miles. It comes with a price tag you don't see until it's too late." She paused, catching her breath, then fixed her eyes on him. "You've been with me 7 years. You know how I operate. Ruthless when I have to be, no room for sentiment. But there's one choice I made that still keeps me up at night." He leaned forward slightly, sensing the shift in her tone. "What choice?" "Back in '98, she began, her voice dropping lower. "Vostek hit a rough patch. Competition was eating us alive. Investors were breathing down my neck. I had to cut costs, fast. So I greenlit a restructuring. Laid off 300 people in one day. No warning, no severance, just gone." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening on the blanket. One of them was a guy named Daniel Carter. Young, maybe 27, a coder with big dreams. He came to my office, begged me to reconsider. Said he had a wife, a kid, a mortgage. I looked him in the eye and told him tough luck. Success demands sacrifice. 2 weeks later, he killed himself. The words landed like a punch. Miles' hands clenched into fists, knuckles whitening, but his face stayed calm, almost too calm. Eleanor didn't notice, lost in the memory. His wife sent me a letter after. Said he'd locked himself in their garage with the car running. Their son found him. 5 years old. Her voice cracked and she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. I shredded that letter, told myself it wasn't my fault, that he should have been stronger. But I see his face sometimes, Miles. Those pleading eyes, I can't shake 'em. Miles's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. The air between them thickened, charged with something unspoken. Eleanor kept going, oblivious to the storm brewing in him. "That wasn't the only thing I lost. There was Olivier, too. A journalist. Smart, funny, the kind of woman who could see right through you. We met when she was writing a piece on me. She didn't care about my money or my title. She cared about me. For a while, I thought maybe I could have it all. Her, the company." "What happened?" Miles asked, his voice steady but clipped. "She gave me an ultimatum," Eleanor said, her eyes glistening. "It was 2005, right when Vostek was about to go public. Biggest moment of my career. But it meant 80-hour weeks, cutting corners, stepping on toes. Olivia said she couldn't watch me turn into someone she didn't recognize. Told me to choose her or the company. I chose the company." She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "She walked out, married some photographer a year later. I heard she's got 2 kids now, a quiet life in Oregon, happy. And I'm here, dying, alone, in a room that costs more than her house." Miles stared at her, his breathing slow and deliberate. "You don't sound like you regret the company," he said, his tone careful. "Just the fallout." Eleanor met his gaze, her eyes sharp despite the tears. "I regret the people, Miles. Daniel, Olivia, all the ones I crushed to get here. I told myself it was business, that I had no choice, but now, with hours left, I'd trade every line of code, every dollar to go back and tell Daniel yes, to tell Olivia I'd stay." She reached for the water glass on her nightstand, her hand shaking. Miles moved to help, but she waved him off, stubborn as ever. "I built an empire," she rasped, setting the glass down. "But I buried my soul under it." He sat back, his silence louder than words. The monitors beeped on, steady and cold. while the weight of her confession settled over them like dusk. Eleanor looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You ever wonder what kind of person I really am, Miles, under all the headlines?" He didn't answer right away, just held her gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost dangerous. "I've wondered that for a long time." The room felt smaller now, the air thick with the echoes of Eleanor's confession. The last traces of daylight had vanished, leaving only the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting shadows across her face. She looked at Miles, her eyes searching his, waiting for something, maybe comfort, maybe judgment, but he just sat there, his hands gripping the arms of the chair, his expression a mask she couldn't quite read. "You've been quiet," she said, her voice softer now, almost tentative. "What's going on in that head of yours? Don't tell me you're just humoring a dying woman." Miles exhaled slowly, his fingers flexing against the chair. "I'm not humoring you, Eleanor. I'm listening, really listening, like you asked." He paused, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "But there's something I need to say, something I've carried for 7 years. She frowned, tilting her head slightly. 7 years? What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low and steady but laced with an edge she hadn't heard before. "Daniel Carter, the coder you fired in '98, the one who begged you to keep him on, who killed himself 2 weeks later. You remember his name, don't you?" Eleanor's breath caught, her hand tightening on the blanket. "Of course I do. I just told you." "He was my father," Miles cut in, his words sharp and deliberate, slicing through her like a blade. "I was that 5-year-old kid who found him in the garage, the car still running, the air thick with exhaust. That's why I'm here, Eleanor. That's why I've been here every damn day for 7 years." Her face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks as if someone had pulled a plug. She stared at him, mouth parted, struggling to process what he'd just dropped into the space between them. "Your father," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Miles, I... You didn't know because I didn't want you to," he said, his tone cold but controlled. "When I applied to be your assistant, I used my mom's maiden name. Carter's too obvious, too close to the bone. I was 25, fresh out of college, broke and angry. I'd spent years piecing together what happened, tracking down old coworkers, digging through records. It all led back to you, Vostech. That restructuring. I took the job because I wanted to see you up close. I wanted to understand the monster who destroyed my family." Eleanor flinched, the word monster hitting her like a slap. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breathing shallow. "Miles, I'm so sorry. I never connected it. I never thought—" "Don't," he snapped, holding up a hand. "Don't say you're sorry yet. You don't get to do that so easy." He stood, pacing a few steps toward the window, then turned back to her. "Do you know what it was like? After he died, my mom worked 3 jobs. Cleaning houses, waiting tables, anything to keep us afloat. She'd come home at midnight, hands cracked and bleeding, and still sit up with me when I had nightmares about that garage. She died when I was 15, Eleanor. Worn out, broken, because of what you did." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she shook her head. "I didn't mean for that to happen. It was business, Miles. I was trying to save the company." "Business?" His voice rose, raw and jagged. "You looked my dad in the eye and told him he wasn't worth keeping. You didn't just take his job, you took his hope. And when he was gone, you didn't even blink. You shredded that letter from my mom like it was nothing." She sobbed quietly, her frail shoulders shaking. "I was wrong, I see that now, but why stay? If you hated me that much, why stick around for 7 years? Miles stopped pacing, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked at her, his anger softening into something more complicated, pain maybe, or confusion. Because I had to know, he said finally. I came here thinking I'd watch you fall apart, that I'd feel some kind of justice seeing you suffer. But it didn't work out that way. You weren't just the cold-blooded CEO I'd built up in my head. You were human. Flawed as hell, sure, but human. I saw you lose sleep over bad deals, fight with doctors to keep going, even crack a smile when I brought you coffee just the way you like it. And it messed me up, Eleanor, because the more I saw you, she wiped her eyes with a trembling hand, staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. So what are you here for now? Revenge? To watch me die? No, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I don't know what I'm here for anymore. Maybe to understand. Maybe to figure out how someone who ruined my life could also be the person I've spent every day with, the one I cared about in some screwed up way. The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Eleanor reached out, her hand shaky, but he didn't take it, not yet. Miles, she said, her voice breaking, I can't undo what I did. But if you're here, if you've stayed this long, maybe there's something left to say. Something we can face together. He looked at her, his eyes dark and stormy, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then he stepped closer, his voice barely audible. Maybe there is. The hospital suite felt like it was holding its breath, the dim light from the lamp pooling around Eleanor's bed. The ocean outside was a dark, endless void now, the only sound the faint crash of waves mixing with the steady beep of her monitors. Miles stood by her side, his hands still in his pockets, his confession hanging heavy between them. Eleanor's tears had slowed, but her eyes stayed locked on him, wide and searching, like she was trying to piece together the man she thought. I didn't want it to end like this, she said, her voice fragile but firm. Not with you hating me, not with this. She gestured weakly at the space between them, then let her hand fall back to the blanket. I've got hours left, Miles, maybe less. And all I can think about is how much I've lost. Not just the company, not the money, but the people. Your dad, Olivia, you. Miles shifted, his jaw tight. You didn't lose me. I'm still here, aren't I? Even after everything. She nodded, a faint, sad smile touching her lips. Yeah, you are. And I don't deserve it. She took a shaky breath, her fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. I went to his grave once, Daniel's, a few years after it happened. I'd heard about the suicide, read your mom's letter before I shredded it. I stood there in this little cemetery in Oakland, staring at his name carved in stone. I didn't know what to say, didn't even bring flowers, just stood there, feeling like the ground should swallow me up. He looked at her, surprised, his anger flickering. You never told me that. I never told anyone, she said, her voice dropping. I was too ashamed, too afraid to face what I'd done, but I kept thinking about him, about that day he begged me, and about you, even before I knew who you were. You've got his eyes, Miles. I see it now, that same quiet intensity. Miles turned away for a moment, staring out at the dark ocean, his shoulders tense. When he spoke, his voice was rough. He wasn't quiet. Not with me. He was alive. Used to play guitar every night after dinner, these old jazz tunes that filled the house. Taught me chords on this beat-up acoustic he'd had since college. Said music was the one thing that kept him sane when work got tough. After you fired him, he stopped playing. I'd find him just sitting there, staring at the guitar like it had betrayed him. Eleanor closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. I took that from him. From you? Yeah, Miles said, turning back to her. You did. But you didn't take everything. Mom kept his records. Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, all those classics. I'd play them when she was working late, pretending he was still there. Kept me going when things fell apart. She opened her eyes, looking at him with something like wonder. Tell me about him. Not the end, the good stuff. What was he like before me? Miles hesitated, then pulled the chair closer and sat, his voice softening. He was funny, always cracking these dumb dad jokes that'd make Mom roll her eyes, loved tinkering, built me a treehouse once, spent a whole summer on it. He'd talk about code like it was poetry, how every line had to fit just right. Said he wanted me to grow up dreaming big, but not so big I'd forget where I came from. He paused, a small smile tugging at his lips. He'd have hated this room, too fancy. He'd say it's a waste when you could just open a window and hear the world. Eleanor laughed, a real laugh despite the pain, though it turned into a cough. He sounds like someone I'd have liked before I turned into this. Miles met her gaze, his expression softening. Maybe. He had a way of seeing the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. The words hung there, a bridge neither of them had expected. Eleanor reached out, her hand trembling, and this time Miles took it, his fingers closing around hers. I've got one more thing to tell you, she said, her voice urgent now. After that day at the cemetery, I started something. A fund, under Daniel's name. Quiet, no press. It's been paying out to families hit hard by layoffs, mine and others, millions, Miles. I wanted to fix something, even if I couldn't fix him. His grip tightened, shock flashing across his face. You? What? It's yours now, she said, her eyes fierce despite her fading strength. I had the lawyers draw it up last week. You're the executor. Use it however you want. Help people, build something, whatever feels right. Just don't let it sit there. Make it mean something. Miles stared at her, speechless, his throat working. Eleanor, Don't argue, she cut in, a spark of her old fire flaring up. You've earned it, putting up with me all these years, and I need it to be you. She squeezed his hand, weaker now. But before I go, do something for me, one last thing. Anything, he said, his voice thick. Play me one of those songs. Your dad's songs. I want to hear what he loved. Miles nodded, pulling out his phone with his free hand. He scrolled through, finding What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. The gravelly voice filled the room, warm and timeless, cutting through the sterile hume of the hospital. Eleanor closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. It's beautiful, she whispered. Then she opened her eyes, looking at him. Dance with me, Miles, one last time. I want to feel alive before it's over. He hesitated, glancing at the monitors, the IV lines. You're too weak. It's not safe. I'm dying, she said, her voice sharp with defiance. Safe doesn't matter anymore. Please, help me up. He couldn't say no, not to that look in her eyes, that desperate human need. Carefully, he stood, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned on him heavily, her silk robe brushing against his sweater as he helped her to her feet. She swayed, but he held her steady, one hand clasping hers, the other supporting her back. They didn't move much, just a slow, gentle sway, more an embrace than a dance. The music wrapped around them, Louis singing about skies of blue and clouds of white. And for a moment, the room wasn't a hospital anymore. It was just them, two people tangled in a past they couldn't change, finding something new in the present. You're stronger than you look, she murmured, her head resting against his shoulder. Had to be, he said softly, his voice catching. Learned it from Mom and Dad. She tilted her head up, meeting his eyes. I see them in you, both of them. That's why I've always trusted you, even when I didn't know why. He didn't answer, just held her a little tighter as the song played on. Her breathing grew shallower, her weight heavier in his arms, but she didn't let go. Neither did he. The monitors beeped faster, a warning they both ignored. For those few minutes they were beyond time, beyond regret, beyond pain. Just two souls swaying to a melody that promised a wonderful world, even if it was one they'd never fully share. When the song ended, Eleanor whispered, "Thank you," her voice barely audible. "For this, for staying." Miles didn't trust himself to speak. He just nodded, guiding her back to the bed, her hand still in his. As he settled her against the pillows, he knew they'd crossed a line. Maybe not to forgiveness, not yet, but to something close, something that felt like peace. The hospital suite was quiet now, the last notes of what a wonderful world fading into memory. Eleanor lay back against the pillows, her breathing shallow, her hand still resting in Miles's. The lamp cast a soft glow over her face, smoothing out the lines of age and illness, making her look almost peaceful. Outside, the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, a thin line of gold breaking through the dark. Miles sat beside her, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles, his eyes tracing her features as if trying to hold on to this moment. "You're still here," she said, her voice so faint it was almost lost in the hum of the monitors. "Didn't think you'd stick around after everything." He gave a small, tired smile. "Told you I'd stay. Meant it." She nodded, her eyes fluttering half-closed. "Good, because I've got one more thing to say, and I need you to hear it." She took a ragged breath, summoning what strength she had left. "I've been a selfish bastard most of my life, Miles. Built Vostek on other people's backs, told myself it was worth it. But you've seen me at my worst and still found something worth saving. I don't know how you did it." Miles shook his head, his voice low. "Wasn't easy. Took me years to look past what you did to Dad. Even now, I'm not sure I've forgiven you, not all the way. But I don't hate you anymore. That's something." Her lips curved faintly, a ghost of her old sharpness flickering through. "That's more than I deserve." She squeezed his hand, weaker now, her grip barely there. "The fund, Daniel's fund. It's yours. Papers are in my desk, top drawer. Lawyers'll handle the rest. But promise me you'll use it. Don't let it sit there gathering dust. Make it matter." "I will," he said, his throat tight. "I'll figure it out. Something Dad would have been proud of." She nodded, satisfied, then turned her head toward the window. The sky was lightening, the gold spreading like spilled paint. "Pretty," she murmured. "Didn't think I'd get to see another sunrise." Miles followed her gaze, the light catching in his eyes. "You made it. That's what counts." Her breathing hitched, a small, pained sound escaping her. He reached for the call button, but she stopped him, her hand trembling against his wrist. "No. No more doctors. Just stay. Talk to me. Tell me what you'll do with it, the fund." He hesitated, then settled back, keeping her hand in his. "Okay," he said, softly. "I've been thinking. A center, maybe. Somewhere kids like me, ones who've lost something, can go. Free tech training, coding classes, music lessons too. Dad always said tech and music went together, like they fed different parts of you. I'd name it after him. The Daniel Carter Hub. A place where people get a shot no matter where they start." Eleanor's eyes brightened, just for a moment. "He'd like that. Your mom too. She'd be proud of you." "Yeah," Miles said, his voice breaking slightly. "She would." The monitors beeped faster now, erratic, a warning he couldn't ignore. But Eleanor's face stayed calm, her gaze fixed on him. "Miles," she whispered. "I'm scared. Not of dying, just of leaving nothing good behind." "You're not," he said, leaning closer. "You've left me something. The fund, this night, all of it." "It's not nothing." She smiled, faint but real. "Then I did one thing right." Her eyes drifted shut, her breathing slowing. Tell me you'll be okay." "I will," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I'll be okay, Eleanor. Because of you. Because of this." Her hand went slack in his, her chest rising one last time before it stilled. The monitors flatlined, a single, piercing tone cutting through the quiet. Miles didn't move, just held her hand tighter, watching the sunrise paint the room in hues of gold and rose. "Goodbye," he whispered, pressing her fingers to his lips. "Rest easy." He sat there as the light grew, the city waking up beyond the glass. Nurses came eventually, their footsteps soft, their voices hushed. They worked around him, giving him space, until one touched his shoulder gently. "Time of death, 5:32 a.m., she said. "She went peacefully." Miles nodded, standing slowly, his legs unsteady. "Yeah, she did." Hours passed in a blur. Paperwork, calls, the mechanics of death. He found the papers in her desk, just like she'd said, a thick envelope with his name scrawled across it in her shaky handwriting. Inside was the deed to the fund, millions set aside in Daniel's name, and a letter. He unfolded it, his hands trembling as he read. "Miles," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I had the guts to tell you the truth last night, about knowing who you were, about what you mean to me. You came into my life as a ghost of my past, but you stayed as something more. I'm not good with words, never was, but here it is. You saved me from dying as the woman who broke your family. You showed me there's still time to choose better, even at the end. The fund's yours. Build that center. Give kids what I took from you. Let my last act be something good. And know I loved you in my messed up way. Eleanor." He pressed the letter to his chest, tears blurring the ink. Later, in the hospital break room, he stared out at the ocean, the envelope heavy in his hands. A coworker found him there, a kind-faced woman named Lisa. "What's next?" she asked gently. Miles took a deep breath, the weight lifting just a little. "North Carolina first," he said. "There's an old guitar of Dad's at my aunt's place. I'm bringing it back. Then I'm building something big, a place for second chances." She smiled. "Sounds like a hell of a legacy." "It's not just mine," he said, touching the letter. "It's hers too, and Dad's." The sun climbed higher, bathing LA in light. Miles stepped outside, the ocean breeze cool against his skin. He closed his eyes, picturing the center. Kids laughing, guitars strumming, code running on screens. And somewhere in it all, he felt them. Dad, Mom, even Eleanor. Watching, proud. "We did it," he whispered to the wind. "We made it mean something." He turned and walked into the day, the letter in his pocket, the future ahead of him. Not a tower of steel and glass, but a foundation of hope, built from the ashes of what was lost.